This is really for people who are working in education, lecturers, LMEs and things, but obviously it's of interest to all the students. The government have made this huge announcement that they're going to be training so many more nurses and midwives over the next sort of 10 years. But of course, to do that, they're going to need lots of lecturers, lots more placements, etc. And there's a problem in the universities. About 15 years ago, the salaries for lecturers and others who were working in teaching more or less kept in step with the grades and banding and what you could earn in hospitals. But over that period, a big gap has opened up, and more of the lead midwives in education are saying that they're having trouble recruiting and they're having trouble keeping lecturers in the schools and things. So we are going to run a little campaign to close the gap, and the first bit about closing the gap is just to find out as much details as we can. So you'll all get an email afterwards, as will lots of lecturers and things. And we're looking for experiences of where there have been problems recruiting and retaining or matching salaries and things. So that's really a shout out. And we'll build all that up and we'll send it off to the Royal College of Midwives and they can put it into their pay submissions, etc. But of course, a lot of the people that work in universities are not on NHS pay scales, they're on university pay scales. And if you read the papers, and lots of you are studying in universities, you'll know that university lecturers aren't very happy in general anyway, if they're not actually on strike today. So that's the first bit. So we're announcing that we're going to pursue that. We're going to try and see what we can do to close the gap, and we need information and research and feedback. So send in tales, and these things always work best if we can, with the statistics, we can support it with anecdotes. The second thing is that these midwifery and maternity festivals, of which there are now 8, we do them in Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and all around the UK, and we've managed for over 10 years to keep them free. The exhibitors and other people contribute to it. And obviously, when universities subscribe to Matflix, that also helps keep this going, because this is effectively a recording studio. All the presentations this morning have been recorded. You'll be able to take them back and share them. So there might have been an audience of a couple hundred here today, but I can assure you that the presentations you had this morning will be seen by thousands within a couple of weeks, because this is what people...
For myself, I think it was really good to speak to some people that obviously we usually wouldn't meet in normal circumstances, especially being up north. We're not quite central. So it was nice to kind of get our opinions and our views across and to feel like they've been heard.
I think it's just speaking to the professionals, I think, so the pop-up sounds like you had with that, which they would have seen online, would they?
I think you just can't beat coming here in person and being able to talk to loads of people that are here and ask all the questions that you need to ask. There's so many benefits to it. You meet lots of people, and it's just a really lovely feeling of camaraderie and interactivity.
So coming here, I feel like I've kind of felt like that I'm not alone in the stuff that I'm going through at placement, and from what I've taken away from this is how to go about situations, how to make it better, and how to feel well supported as well. We had some top tips given, so going into placement, I definitely going to take them on board and try and make the most out of my learning experience.
For me, like the main reason I wanted to come was for that networking, for finding my people, the people that are interested in learning about the same things that I'm interested in, and taking those away and sharing them, and because we're on Midwifery Society at our university, and just kind of sharing those with our fellow colleagues and everything. So yeah,
I'm going to be looking back at the things that we've gone through, because there was a lot of content. But I think the joys of now that we can meet face to face, so that's why we really wanted to be here face to face. There is something about meeting other people. So yeah, next time sign up, definitely.
and welcome everyone to now it must be session 12, our last session in the series of series 10. So welcome everybody tonight's maternity midwifery hour, and I've got two lovely guests. I've got the lovely Professor Hora Soltani, and I've got the lovely Amba Morrell with it, and we're going to put them on the spot in a second, but I'm just going to say I'm Sue MacDonald, and I'm the curator for the Maternity Midwifery Hour and the Maternity Midwifery Festivals, and it is my pleasure to be here chairing this session this evening. And as I was saying to both Hora and Amber, what I love is when I'm hearing from people who've written something and have done something really important in the flesh, as it were, because things really come alive. And when you're busy, it's sometimes quite difficult to get through all the papers, but when you've heard people talking and you think, oh, I'm going to go and read that. So here we are, and we're going to put both our lovely speakers on the spot, as we always do, and ask them to share with us a moment of the week. And I'm going to start with Hora now.
Good afternoon, well, good day, depending where you are. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you, Susan, for inviting me. It was a nice surprise to hear from you, and it's a great honor to be here. I always love to share our experiences from research and practice in maternity with everybody, especially our peers, midwifery students, colleagues. So thank you so much for this opportunity. My special moment that I was just thinking, it has to be our experience yesterday when we launched this report in the House of Commons with the key stakeholders, including women, families, but also the key policy makers, people who hopefully they can make a difference, they can transfer evidence and make it happen, make things happen, transfer evidence to practice, to policy documents. And I think more importantly, how well it went down and how warmly it was received, the feedback. It was so encouraging. Well, obviously I'm going to share more about it later, but the fact that it seemed to be on so many people's minds for such a long time, and we taken the opportunity, and with the help of Race and Health Observatory, we managed to do this, conduct this really important piece of work. I think that was really amazing. I was just saying, also going to the House of Commons, sharing this for the first time, I suppose, somebody formally addressing these inequalities in neonatal assessment. I just felt somehow being part of the history of people throughout the history of Britain, trying to make a difference in different ways. So it felt really special to me.
Wow, it is a special place to go to. So thank you for sharing that, Hora, and more from you later. So we'll put Amber on the spot now for her moment of the week.
Hi, Sue. Thank you for having me. My moment of the week is my article being published, The Truth About Advocating as a Student Midwife. Thank you. So I really wrote that from the heart about my experiences and feelings about advocating through my midwifery journey. And I've had some brilliant feedback from other students who also advocate and how they resonated with how I felt. So I was very happy with how that came out and how people have reacted to that. And also want to say a big thank you to my friend Rachel, again, for doing the imagery. Everyone check her out. She does very good revision.
Was that as well? Yes, fantastic.
That's Rachel's work, Catching Babies on Instagram. Please follow her.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that, Amber. It's fantastic. And it's lovely to have something published as a student as well, because it gets you on that path to thinking you've got things to say. So we're going to return to Amber in a moment. And I'm just going to say, for the people who are with us, maybe for the first time, where we came from. And that's the Maternity and Midwifery Hour, because, as you know, we had the Maternity and Midwifery Forum, and we used to have well, we still do now, but festivals and conferences and study days. And obviously with COVID-19 pandemic, that had to cease, especially with the lockdowns. And so we felt it was really important that midwives, student midwives, everybody actually in maternity services had something they could connect, they could get lots of information, especially in the early days. It was much more about actually COVID and what people were doing during the COVID. And now it's much more all sorts of things around midwifery and maternity, and we're still going even 3 years afterwards, and I hope you enjoy this evening with us. And just to re-say also that everything we do is recorded, so if you miss anything, or you hear about another presentation that went on last week or the week before, you can access it via Matflix. We love you to access, all for free, and you can share, and we love that because we love to share knowledge and information. It's really important to cascade that. And I'll also at this point say a big thank you to our student midwives and our midwives and everybody in the maternity service, keeping everything going. Times stressful, and they seem to have been stressful forever, but thank you anyway for all the things you're doing at the moment. Because of course midwifery has shortages, and having read, now you see I've got a heap of reading here, the state of maternity services, which came out this very day, 2023. This is on your resource list. We're a bit short of midwives, and I'm sure you're feeling that. Everybody's feeling that, but this is actually down in print that we're short of midwives. I think it's now down to 2,500 in England. That's not counting Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland. So this is quite readable. It's quite simple, but it's very useful for you to know the facts and figures behind that. Okay, other news. Wimbledon's still on for those tennis people. Advanced date, the 1st to the 7th of August is World Breastfeeding Week from WHO. That's that. And it's also, it seems to be a week, this is my Twitter stuff coming out, this is a week for student midwives. And I'll say a big well done to Siobhan Callahan for transforming her maternity unit with artwork. You're going to see how Amber's been transforming her unit with a different sort of work. But it's amazing how powerful all of our students and our midwives can be. Knitting update. Now, I told you last week I was doing some knitting. This is from the festival and from Amanda Hutchison, who was having a little workshop of knitting. This is a bit historical for midwives. We do tend to have this history of sitting in corners. Not that I've ever done that on duty. It's usually something I've done in my break. But I've gone wrong with this. This is the second time it's been knitted, and it's still got too big. It's meant to be 8 inches across.
Oh, I love the colour, Sue.
Well, I think it's a kind of Ukraine colour, which is rather nice, but I'm getting there. But there's a little hole in the middle. You can see it. So I might have to be a little bit of mending there. So that's my little news of knitting.
Not intentional.
Now, if you missed the Bali ICM, which sadly I did, check out the video clip. Again, that's on the resources list. It's only 4 minutes, but it gives you a flavour of what went on. A lot of dancing. Didn't see a lot of cake, but I suspect there was cake and food because I heard about it from people like Diane Garland shared that with me. So it just looked joyful and lovely. So if you need your spirits lifting, that's what you need to watch. Hot off the press, we've got the state of maternity services. The other thing I'm reading more carefully, especially in relation to what Hora's going to talk about, is the Decolonising Midwifery toolkit from the RCM. Again, it's not a huge document, very readable, very practical, which is what we need. And we need these tools to get on and address these issues, and fast. Okay. And the other hot off the press, of course, is this rather large article. Now this, well, it's not an article, it's a report. This is what Hora's going to be talking about. And it's the review of neonatal assessment and practice in Black, Asian and minority ethnic newborns. Now, I think people are using global majority now as a term as well. We're having to get used to all these different terms because I know the BAME title is quite uncomfortable. Being, who wants to be a minority after all? So that's some of my bedtime reading over the summer break. And it was really lovely that Hora was able to join us, because it is hot off the press and lovely from that point of view. So I have to say, this evening, I found it very difficult to have a title for the whole session, because you'll see the themes are very similar, obviously, coming together, and really important piece of work. But it was quite difficult to think a nice little title. So we've used it as sort of contemporary issues, using the student as an advocate, and also neonatal assessment and practice. And we're starting off with looking at the students, because we love our students, and we have a very active student here. And obviously, I don't know how they do it, because students, and I remember this from my training, even though I'm very old, I can remember being very busy and very tired, because it's not like being any other student in the whole world, because you're not just learning all this massive amount of theory, but you're doing a massive amount of very new practice in a very different field, and learning a whole new language. So how they do other things is just amazing to me. So they have to learn all that stuff in theory and practice. They have to address also increasingly inequalities in the workforce and in society, which sounds a huge thing to do, but this Amba is doing that, I have to say. Looking at how it affects the workforce, and how, more importantly, how it affects outcomes for women and their babies, because many reports have been coming out to say the outcomes for women, black and brown women, and their babies are worse than for those who are white. And we need to change that. We need to look at what we're doing that's not right, that's not addressing it. And we're delighted to have Amba Morrell with us this evening. She's a third-year student midwife. She's from London, and she's going to qualify in a few weeks. Whoa, exciting times. Now, before that, she's been a dental nurse for 8 years. Now, oh gosh, I've got a huge admiration for you for that. Dental, oh, scary for me. And she's described herself, and she's done a beautiful article which she's just talked about, and that's also on your resource list. So do read that, because it's lovely, and it really you'll get to know Amba very well, I hope, from what she's going to say anyway. She was very vocal about issues in maternity services to help bring change, and she's won the Student Nursing Times Student Midwife of the Year 2023. We have prize winners here. Well done to you, Amba.
Thank you.
And she's planning, surprise, to continue to advocate for women as a newly qualified midwife. Well, of course. So welcome, Amba. I hope you're going to tell us about your journey and how you started. But I'm only giving you 15 minutes. So welcome.
I'll be brief. How it all started was me obviously starting my course, learning the theory. I started in the back end of 2020, so we were still in COVID times. So I was doing a lot of online lectures, and I had the time to read around issues in maternity that maybe were briefly touched on in lectures or I'd seen on social media. And I realized that there were so many issues, especially for Black, Asian and ethnic minority women and babies. And I'll be honest, before starting the course, I was ignorant to this issue. So I really felt like I was compelled to talk about the issues that I had come across on my social media platforms, and it just kind of spiraled from there. And I put on a conference in my first year called the Racial Inequalities in Maternity Services, that had a very good response, and I believe the participants learned a lot, and hopefully they've applied that into their practice. Going back to what you said earlier, Sue, about how do we manage it all, whilst theory and placement, because we was online, I had lectures at home. So on my lunch break, I would be arranging the conference, or on my lunch break at the hospital, I'm replying to emails. It's constant. It's not, I have a day to do this. I'm doing everything. After I do my essay, I'm planning the conferences. So wow. It's a lot of work, but it's so worth it to educate service users and midwives, students, other healthcare professionals about the issues that are going on in maternity. is something I'm very passionate about, and I really, really do encourage students, any kind of student, I guess, nursing, midwifery, to advocate for the issues that they see and are passionate about to help really improve overall services for patients and clients.
I mean, I'm very impressed on the conference idea and how you, on earth you organise. I mean, I know you've done it in spare time, but how did you decide on the sort of content and who would speak?
A lot of research. I did a lot of research about my speakers and what they could bring to the conference and what their message would be. So it would normally be people that I'd been following for a while, or I'd read pieces of their work if they were published. So it was a lot of research and a lot of time. Creating the conferences also took a lot of time, and the bits that I was speaking about, I had to go back and research and get my references and make sure I was speaking up to date about the issues that I'm talking about. So it was kind of like doing a separate theory piece of work, really. But it was manageable, and because I was passionate about it, it didn't seem like work. It didn't seem like a chore.
Okay. So how about in clinical practice? How do you bring those skills into your role as a student in clinical practice? Because that's quite a big task.
It is a big task, and it's not easy. It's scary, especially as a student. Obviously, you're still learning. Your knowledge is increasing. You're not up to the qualified standards in knowledge. So if you are seeing something and you want to kind of, ask, is this the right way to go? Or you really feel like this isn't right, you have to make sure that what you're saying is clear and concise, and what your point is, to make sure it's heard correctly, and use your support systems to help you through that process, whether that's at uni or your clinical supervisors in placement, your friends, your family, other students, because it's important to use your voice. Part of being a midwife or a nurse is being able to advocate for your patients and your clients. So you need to be able to make sure that you can do that effectively in the right way, in an appropriate way, to make sure that you get the correct response. That's not always guaranteed, because it depends how people receive that, but you just need to be strong in what you believe and know that you're fighting for the right reason. And also advocate for yourself. If you're not having a good time in placement, really don't just brush it under the carpet. You need to address that the best way you can with the help of your university.
That's probably harder actually than advocating for women, isn't it? For yourself, because it's kind of easier fighting for someone else, isn't it?
I don't know actually. I guess they're harder in different ways, because if you're advocating for a client, you can kind of detach in some ways emotionally yourself. But if it's about yourself, it's consuming. So it's hard, and then it's hard to get your point across the way that you want to. But I would really advise anyone that is having any problems to definitely use their voice and advocate for themselves, because it could actually improve the experience for other students also.
So what was the biggest challenge, do you think, Amber?
The biggest challenge? I think learning to use my voice.
Okay.
It was hard, because I'm a student, and I always had that fear of people saying, well, she's just a student. She's in her first year or her second year. What does she really know? She hasn't worked in clinical practice full time properly as a qualified midwife. She hasn't really seen much. But that's not the right approach to take. I've read the research, I've read the statistics, I've heard other people's personal stories. I know that issues are out there and they're real. Whether I've seen them not personally is irrelevant. They're still there. So it's really important to just make sure that your voice and your point is being heard, and contribute to creating a change and making a better service for everybody.
Okay. So, I mean, how would you just you give that for that student on her first day or maybe second day in the clinical area?
What advice would I give?
Yeah, let's have a bit of advice. You're in your third year, you're coming to the end, you're going to be blossoming forth as a midwife, which is wonderful.
Thank you. The advice I would give is to learn as much as you can from all the different midwives you'll work with, because every midwife would work differently with the same tools. So you might like one midwife style of working compared to another. So really absorb that. Be proactive. Don't shy away from doing the skills. Watch how it's done. Read the theory. Go and practice it if you can. And just take any opportunity of learning that you can to really build up your skills and your knowledge. Go home after a shift. Read about something interesting that you've seen on your shift. Read the guidelines. Read the evidence, and just increase your theory outside of what your uni is providing you to really enhance your knowledge for when you do qualify at the end of the course.
Yeah, so I was interested, you said you were saying right at the beginning that people briefly touched on areas. I'm taking it you meant inequalities and racism or whatever. Is that still happening, that not much is mentioned? Or do you think I suppose what I'm trying to find out, if one, how much was included in your program, but also whether that's changed as an effect of you being there. Do you think it has?
I personally, I don't think it's changed because of me. My program, again, I can only speak for my program. I'm not sure.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
But my program has been very good at addressing inequalities in maternity care and educating students on how to not bring unconscious bias into your practice and making sure it's an inclusive service. So London South Bank have done a really great job at doing that, and that is actually off the own back of their own research and adjustment of the curriculum to go with current times and to address the issues that have in maternity services. So I do believe that the students in my university should, when they qualify, be aware of the issues and how to break down any personal unconscious bias so it doesn't affect the care that they're giving.
Yeah, because that's really important. That's an important focus.
Yeah.
But do you think they've put more in since you started? More of that sort of content?
So I believe that the cohort, the first years now, they have a different curriculum, and I think at second years too, I think there is more of a focus on racial disparities and other inequalities in their program, so that those years will have a better understanding.
Yeah, oh, that's grand.
Doing a really good job.
Yeah, I think they need to wheel you in to be doing some of the sharing of how you can cascade it down.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you had any challenges with women, or women who just might have said to you, oh, well, I'll just do as people want. Have you had when you've tried to I guess what I'm asking is, when you've advocated for women, have there been times when it's been difficult because the women almost haven't wanted to be advocated for?
I think you have to read the room about
and
treat it on an individual basis, and what's the vibe of the women and her birthing people and their families. For any woman, I always advocate that, excuse me, it's your body, your baby, your choice. Always ask for the risks and benefits of any intervention or treatment offered to you, so you can make an informed decision for yourself.
Yeah. So that's been fairly straightforward then.
I mean,
that's it.
It's not always straightforward, but you just have to keep persevering and let them know that not everything that is offered to them is they have to undertake.
Yeah, no, and that's a key part of it. But it is difficult, isn't it, to sort of have all that statistics and all that research knowledge that you can share with women so easily. I guess You're obviously a very avid reader with
Yeah,
lots
I do like reading.
Well,
Do not
because
have time to read for leisure.
yes, but don't throw away the textbooks,
I
because
will.
I think what you were saying, even to students, as you know, when they get home, reading something that's come up in practice, that's a really good thing to do as a qualified midwife, isn't it? It sort of just refreshes the brain and the parts that need to be reached. I mean, I love the sort of graphic on your thing. The voice is powerful, because that comes over as very confident. And do you think yourself a confident, or did you think you were confident when you started?
When I started, I wasn't confident, actually. And sometimes I have days where I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? You know, but you have to push through for the greater cause. And I'm passionate about what I'm saying and what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I feel like that drives me to keep going. And to be honest, being acknowledged by the Nursing Times and winning the award helped me really be like, wow, actually people are listening to me, and they actually are interested in what I have to say. So I think that spurred me on. And during my third year, I've taken a bit of a break with the conferences for various reasons, but once I qualify, I'll be back doing my own conferences, and I really want to spread awareness about different issues that are still going. So I feel like I've got a good plan for where I'm going to go with it.
Fantastic. That is superb, Amber. I'm really pleased. It's been really nice you sharing your journey, or part of your journey, because I know that it's quite a short time that we will give you to talk about it. But I will really commend our audience to read. It's all online, very, very easy to access. And if you have any questions for Amber, for those of you watching, just pop them in the chat box. They'll come through to me, and I'm just reminding you, because I'm going to look away over here, they'll come through to my other screen, so I can ask Amber at the end of the session. So we should have time for questions. But thank you so much, Amber. And I think a worthy winner of the award, and it's so lovely that you were able to come with us and share your journey. And congratulations.
I know, thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
And now you can relax for a bit until we start firing questions at you. So we're moving along now. We're letting Amber having a little rest now for a minute or two. And I'm just going to highlight that many of you are going to be aware about the NHS Race and Health Observatory project into neonatal assessment, because it's been on the radio, and Hora, who's with us today, has been on every radio show in the country and more, because people have been really interested in it, and we are really interested in it, because it's really important, because it's about assessing newborns and their skin color and texture and all of that through the APGAR score, and through, if they happen to be non-well perfused, but also then to become jaundiced. I think some of the interviews, I think, got the two a little bit mixed up, but I know that Hora's going to put us very straight on that. We know the difference between an APGAR score and then the daily systematic examination we do, looking out for things like jaundice. So I'm so thrilled, actually, that Professor Hora Soltani has joined us. She's been very busy, and she's a professor in maternal infant health within health and social care research at Sheffield Hallam University. Many of you will know her work previously. And an important feature of her work is its diverse nature and collaborations with a wide range of disciplines, including design and technology, health psychology, food and nutrition sciences, obstetrics, and health inequalities. And the health inequalities is the area, obviously, this sits within, but keeping a thematic integrity with the core aim of enhancing care standards and reducing health inequalities for mothers and babies. Really important area. So Hora, welcome. The screen is now yours, all yours. Thank you for coming. and you will need to unmute yourself, Hora. The wonders of science and technology. Okay, we've just got a few technical issues while
Okay, I'm unmuted now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Please, thank you.
The slides are coming back. Fabulous.
Right, thank you. Thank you so much, Suze, for your excellent introduction. Thank you. I have to say I'm delighted to be here, but as you said, Sue, it's been a very busy day. I've been kind of talking about this project almost all day. So I apologize if it just, yeah, it's been a long day, but yeah, I think it's a very important area, and it's very close to my heart as well. You know, personally, I feel the kind of inequalities that women have been experiencing. It's an area that whoever I talk to, it just seems that someone got a similar story to tell. And in fact, all of that, I think, set the scene for us to do this. And when we were actually sharing this with the key stakeholder during the launch, it was really interesting to see how much and how many of the people in the audience, a lot of women actually, after most of them, or some of them even being professionals, they had a personal story to tell, and their experiences all kind of echoed each other in terms of the poor quality of care they received, or the lack of understanding, especially about such assessments. So, and also this research, and most of the research we do, is all got a very much participatory nature to it. And I think we had people from the participants in the study sharing their story, how their baby's jaundice being missed because of being a mixed color. It was really powerful story, and I wish I had Lauren and Matt, who shared the story with the lovely son who is 4 now. You know, the terrific experience that they actually went through. It was really important, I think, for us to kind of set the scene. To not that people don't think it's important, but I think it really brought a human side to it more than just the data. So, why did we do this study? You can control the back of the screen. I got control over this. Sorry, it's gone. It worked very well when we started. Okay, so this project, as I said, has been supported, commissioned by the Race and Health Observatory for us to look at. We were actually given the choice of what to look at, and we, knowing the fact that, as Sue said earlier, we know ethnicity and race are important predictors of health in mothers and babies. We know mothers from Black ethnicity, they're almost 4 times more likely to die during childbirth, and after that, women from Asian backgrounds almost 2 times higher likelihood of dying during childbirth. And the story is similar for their babies. Babies from Black and Asian ethnic minority are much more likely to have mortality. So we know that ethnicity has a negative impact on the health outcomes for the mothers and babies. So we thought it's probably important to start looking at the assessment tools that we have because these are the actual first step to start doing something for these for the people who need help. So APGAR score, as you know, and also jaundice and cyanosis mainly as part of APGAR are really areas that perhaps the most commonly used practices and assessments in the sphere of maternal and neonatal health. Every baby, as you know, within the first 5-10 minutes is being assessed through APGAR score. And also we know that it's not just in the UK. Obviously we are, concerned now, mainly a lot of the key stakeholders that we communicate that with, they are concerned about what's happening in the UK. But if you think about it, APGAR score is used in every baby, almost every baby across the globe. So it's really important to look at that. And when you look at the history of it, and where it comes from, I think it really it made people to think about it, and that's why the RHO was very keen for us to look at this. So what we did, we using a kind of a triangulation of different methods, looking at doing some systematic reviews, desktop reviews, and also interviewing with healthcare professionals. We started to look at have some sort of in-depth understanding and in-depth analysis of experiences of healthcare professionals. And we had our team as a research team, we were really interdisciplinary ourselves, myself, Professor Gina Higginbottom, Professor of Ethnicity. We had Professor Sam Oddy, who is from Bradford, Professor of Neonatology, Frankie, another researcher within our team, Amy Fairness, another researcher. So it was a real multidisciplinary, multi-ethnicity team. And I think it's important, especially for some research, to reflect the diversity in the population that we look at. So that was for a start. And then the selection of these, I think I tried to set the scene why we did this. But what we did, we didn't focus so much on the numbers and quantitatively see what has worked, what hasn't worked. We started by looking at experiences and providing in-depth analysis of the experiences, because we thought if you look at the stories, it just creates a powerful story and scenario and platform to raise questions about these very important and commonly used assessments. So we looked at experiences of parents who, obviously parents don't normally get involved in APGAR scoring, but experience jaundice or cyanosis. But we also looked at the healthcare professionals' experiences of assessing these conditions. With the desktop reviews, we try to look at the policies and guidelines and some sort of training packages or educational programs that involve this, and to see how they actually address ethnicity and race. And with the interviews, we try to top that up and complement the literature, the extent of literature with regard to the areas, experiences of healthcare professionals and parents. So this is what we did. And what we found, just to say that some of you, I'm sure as students or as staff or researchers, if you've done systematic reviews, you know that it is a massive job and with a huge amount of energy. And we, having 3 areas with 2 kind of diversion, one looking at healthcare professionals and women and parents, you can imagine what a huge job it was for 11 months. So it was really, really hard work, but we were really pleased that we managed to complete that. You know, when we screened over 8,000 articles in the job, looking at over 200 full text, and we at the end we found 56 studies that looked at healthcare professionals' experiences, and 9 of them only looked at parents' experiences in the areas that I mentioned. We identified 18 policies and 1 training program or training resource to actually assess our objectives. For the interviews, we interviewed 57, including 24 of them being parents. So what did we find? I keep emphasizing that we found a lot of interesting stuff, but I just, without disappointing people, I want to say, obviously, we don't have all the solutions, but I feel asking the right question, or this is really taking the first step to climb a mountain. I think quite often the first step is the key stage. And I feel that's what we started to do. You know, all the assumptions, all the hypotheses, all the doubts in people's mind. This is perhaps the first time that somebody's formally has looked at this and raised it. And I think hopefully from now on is going to be taken more seriously. I shared my own experiences. Other people, I mean, my son is 24, but that's the reason why this was very close. But I had a very similar story. I am being concerned about my son's well-being 24 years ago when he was born. When I told my midwife, she did say clearly, I'm sorry, I don't know what to look for in a baby from ethnic minority. And, you know, I'm sure you all heard that. Pregnant women or mothers never forget their birth experiences. This is still as fresh as, you know, to me that as, you know, when it happened. But the story, as I said, is so repeatedly when we talk to people, they have similar stories. So that's why we did what we did. Now, in terms of APGAR score, you may know that, in fact, 2020 was 70th anniversary of APGAR score. It was kind of invented, if you like. It was designed by Professor Virginia Apgar from America, who was an obstetric anesthesiologist. And she did a great work. I think, you know, she obviously at the time, it was a very important, and it did the job. She perhaps introduced it at the time for the population, she did it. But basically what she did, most of her indicators, as you know, is APGAR, standing for appearance, pulse, grimace, and activity and respiration. They stand for, or they've been mainly coming from the observation of white European originated babies. And appearance that originally has been defined as pink all over, it's the terminology that we actually ask professionals' views about that. What do they think? And as you can see here, and you can read in the paper, in the report, we had a lot of people raising the concerns about the relevance of terminology of pink, or pink all over particularly. And so therefore, you know, there was this about, you know, some kind of lack of relevance to pink was raised by a lot of healthcare professionals that we were talking about. But I have to say, even though we tried not to focus on the quantitative side, I was personally interested to know what the literature says. And you know, immediately what most of people are interested when they look at the APGAR, the primary outcome is what people want to know is APGAR predicting mortality. So, and it's interesting, I'm just going to share with you, I apologize if this looks complicated, but all I want to say, this is from one of the papers. There were at least 3 very large studies, very large cohort studies. 2 of the, well, they were all American, and nothing was from UK. But these 2 studies, one of them included more than 25 million babies, the other one more than 6 million. It's really large cohort. And what they showed, you know, what people want to know overall, does it work? So in general, they said that actually in terms of mortality immediately after birth, it does do the job in the sense that babies who had low APGAR scores, 0 to 3, they were more likelihood of dying. So it was predicting mortality. But what they did, they compared different ethnicities very vaguely. They divided it to 3 categories: white, Hispanic, and Black. So non-Hispanic white, Hispanic babies, and Black. And as you can see in this, the one that I've got, I put red box around it. This is the graph, shows the 5-minute APGAR score for these babies, and the blue line is for the non-Hispanic Black babies. You can see that the red line is for the Hispanic and the black line is for non-Hispanic white babies. You can see even the low APGAR score where predictor of mortality, there seem to be variation in the level of prediction of the low APGAR score and mortality, so that for the babies, like more babies from Black background have been given low APGAR score. So there's some sort of variation in the way that it's been scored. What the paper concluded, they said actually the Black babies may be more resilient, which in our terms, we think that is a stereotyping. I mean, they have provided some potential theoretical explanation for that. But what the other explanation may be that people are not applying, or they don't know how to exactly take the skin color in, and it may question the actual application of the scoring system. So to us, that perhaps provide a clue for us that maybe the reliability of APGAR score is questionable. And as you can see here, the relevance of especially terminology of pink all over, it's questionable. It may be that we have to look at certain areas like in the mouth and around the lips or the palm of the hand. And in fact, you know, these are very powerful comments that we had from some healthcare professionals that were saying that even a white baby doesn't come out glowing pink. And so I don't think that's accurate anyway. So the terminology, as you can see, very strongly questioned. The other person said, pink to me is a bit of an oxymoron, really. It's like you don't get pink black or Asian babies, do you? So these are really powerful statements to us, kind of providing an evidence for perhaps we need to look at this. At least the terminology needs to be looked at. In terms of cyanosis, you know, the blue, again, there seem to be kind of a lot of inaccuracies and inconsistencies about describing blue in a very dark black or dark skinned babies. As you can see, blue, pale or blotchy may be harder to see in the black babies. As one of the healthcare professionals were saying, what I'm seeing cyanosis looking like in a white skin tone, you're going to miss it in a black baby. So we had a lot of healthcare professionals saying that I'm not quite sure, I'm not quite confident what to look for or where to look for. And the other thing that literature showed that perhaps using pulse oximetry, these tools may make it more reliable, better than, they're not reliable totally, so there's still inconsistency in them, but they're better than just looking at the skin. And also when we looked at the guidelines, there was similarly, you know, the guidelines were referring to the color blue, pink or normal without really being clear or detailed about what does that mean in different ethnicities. So there seem to be serious concerns about how these are detailed. In terms of jaundice, especially that we know that jaundice is very common, is more common in the ethnic minority background. Knowing the actual what's happening, what are the dire consequences is not just the mortality, but also the brain damage that babies could experience after that if it's not timely, if it's not diagnosed in a timely manner. It's really important to see, for the healthcare professionals to be prepared to identify that. Many healthcare professionals felt again underconfident to actually to detect this. Again, the literature showed that TCB, transcutaneous bilirubinometers, they are more reliable than just looking at skin. But again, the reliability of these TCBs, particularly in the darker skin, seem to be very inconsistent. Some showing better reliability in black babies, some showing less reliability. So therefore, definitely there's room for more research in this area to make it more efficient. Training on how to use TCBs also was another issue. A lot of people, healthcare professionals, didn't feel confident to use TCBs or didn't know how to actually interpret it. It wasn't, for them to know what is the threshold. There seemed to be an inconsistency in the threshold, the different trusts we're using. So in conclusion, The assessment of the APGAR score, cyanosis and jaundice from skin seem to be very difficult, particularly for babies from ethnic minority background. And these are perhaps the group that needs more accurate than, you know, others, obviously, because of the complications that people are experiencing. Skin color, obviously, we all know that should not be used in the isolation, but it's important for people to get proper training, what else to look for and where to look for. Many healthcare providers feel underconfident, as we said, and also they felt that there's not sufficient training for them where to look, what to look, and how to look. And then, I mean, we have a specific recommendation, so I don't know how we're doing with time to go through the actual recommendations. But definitely, certainly, there seems to be a delay or either a jumping. For the practice recommendations, we feel there's an urgent need for the training of the healthcare professionals to be, and for the students, it's really important for them to get the opportunity to rotate. If they're not in an area that there's a high exposure to diverse communities, it's very important for them to get opportunity to rotate, to be exposed to babies from different ethnic background, and all the healthcare. If it's not actual real situation, at least the simulation opportunities be provided for them to know what they should look for. We need to make sure there are black dolls in the training, because, you know, even just to raise awareness of and people to be mindful of these variations. As I said, that it seems to be, you know, because the detection is poor, is important to the tools to be available, the TCB tool or the pulse oximetry, they seem to be better and they should be available. People should be trained how to use them. And also we have to make sure for the families and parents, there should be better guidelines and guidances and information for them what to look for to be able to talk to healthcare professionals and get advice. In terms of the recommendations for policy, we looked at 18 policy documents and 1 training resource, and they seem to be, again, they are not necessarily, as I said, they are referring to to blue and pink in black babies, but they're not necessarily clear exactly what to look for or how to look for and where to look for, and the relevance of it. There seem to be lack of recognition of or raising awareness of the differences that they may have to spot, and also it's important for them to signpost people where to look for more detailed information. Finally, research. As I said within my, you know, what I was explaining, exploration of the wider use of these TCBs, these machines, especially in darker skin babies, both pulse oximetry and TCB is really important. We need to look at the use of the APGAR score to see exactly what people do, because it seems that a lot of people were saying, actually, there were some people saying, I never thought about this skin color. If the baby was crying, I was just giving it a 9. So it's like they were saying that they compensate for the skin color. They make it up. They were saying that we make it up. So we need to understand what people really do when they do assess the skin color and how relevant that skin tone still is, and how else we can, what alternatives we could have. The final recommendation I think is really important for us in terms of jaundice, to really nail that and to understand, because there are reports that people are missing jaundice, particularly from ethnic minority backgrounds, but we don't know really what's happening. We need to have a root cause analysis of the cases that are admitted because of the severe jaundice, looking at the babies who've been missed, the diagnosis being missed, and to see if ethnicity really played a role, and was it the training, and not for a blame game, just for understand where we need to improve our training, where our skills and our understanding of to help us to really move forward on this. So that's it. I hope I have finished on time. One thing, sorry, if you don't mind, Sue, I just add, we also looked at the actual, the social aspect of the racism and discrimination and quality of care. One thing that was really powerfully stated repeatedly was that women were saying that their concerns are not taken seriously. They were saying that they don't feel confident, or they feel anxious, they feel worried about raising their concerns, and when they do, they don't feel that they are listened to. So the other aspect about compassionate care, culturally sensitive care, is really important for us to involve that in our training for the healthcare professionals. So I think I have control and I don't have control. I'm trying to go back. There's a bit of I think lag, kind of delay in responding to but anyway, that's it. Thank you so much. And
and thank you too, Hora. I know I've been very mean to both of you because you've got a lot to say and you've only been given a little time. So thank you so much, Hora, for sharing that with us, because anyone will see. And when you hit the link, don't immediately press print, because unless you've got lots of paper. Because it is a big document, and there is an executive summary, which is really useful. But actually, dipping into it, you get that sophistication of it, of what women are saying and what practitioners are saying. And actually, that makes it even more come alive, that this is us and what we do. And I think what Hora, you were saying at the end, is especially relevant, because I noticed I was listening to a couple of phone-ins today, and families were phoning in and saying, I said my child was jaundiced, and the midwife said, oh no, it's not. And they weren't looking at my colouring, they weren't looking at the baby in a proper way. And I thought, this consistently comes, that we don't listen to the women and the families, because they will know their baby. And they know if things aren't maybe right. And, we do need to tune into that. So thank you so much. That was fantastic. We'll have to have you come again. I've got some little comments coming through. I'm just waiting for some questions to come through. I've got something, because Amber was speaking first. This is comments more than questions, so don't panic. It's Amanda. Hello, Amanda, saying, well done, Amanda. Pretty and I are watching you on campus. We're feeling very proud of you. Now, I'm just waiting for Amber to go pink in the cheeks there, because she will, and she has. And Amber, now, I think this is Rachel saying, hi, Rachel, saying, Amber, as your friend, some of our first year of midwifery, being on this journey together has been amazing. I've watched you grow in our knowledge, passion and confidence. The world of midwifery is so lucky to have you, and we need more like you. So excited to see what you achieved. Oh, isn't that lovely? We're going to have her blushing away all evening. Well, that's so lovely. And then now we've got, so thank you, Rachel. That's lovely, because from a peer, that is very special. So thank you for sharing that. Now we've got Sophie Hagger. Hi, Sophie. Says, hi, Amber. Congratulations, Student Midwife of the Year. What would you say is the most important change you'd like to see in maternity services and midwifery in the next 5 years?
That's a big question.
It is. Our audience always come up with fantastic questions, I have to say.
So I don't want there to be any racial disparities, to be quite honest. I don't feel like it shouldn't be happening anywhere, but especially with the healthcare system that we have and the diverse population that we have and we cater to with the NHS specifically. I would really like to see all racial disparities and inequalities just not to have to be mentioned, because they don't exist anymore. I hope it's not too big ask.
I think that would be fantastic, wouldn't it? Yeah. Because what a difference that would make to the mortality and morbidity which is very much unseen. So that's a good thing to have. Thank you, Sophie. Good question. And then Kareen, now I'm going to have to pronounce Nadia, I hope I pronounced that correctly. She says, thank you, Prof. Hora. Jaundice on coloured skin is a fascinating subject. And I think it was because that was actually being discussed a lot on the radio today. And I was quite interested because I was thinking, it's not just us that need to start seeing, because we can kind of compensate. And I thought your thing about people making it up, I'm not sure if it's making it up or kind of working with your tacit knowledge and thinking this baby's okay. But I wonder
what they said. Sorry, I was quoting.
No, absolutely. But I was wondering, because they say about things like safety belts in cars were designed for men. So for women, it's never quite as good. Do you think we need to sort of really target scientific people who are designing these, for example, measures of jaundice, skin jaundice, ECPs? Do you think we need to target them to actually have different machines? And this is me because I never did physics at school, wasn't very good, so I don't know how it functions. I've got an idea, but not as much as someone who designs one. Do we need to target manufacturers to design things particularly for different colour skin?
I think that's the problem. They seem to be not very accurate for particularly darker skin people. So test and retest and reliability testing of it. That's how you get things. Obviously, it's very hard to get something 100%, but to improve efficiency, we need to have more focused research on specific populations, because we know that the blood levels of bilirubin, for example, that's the gold standard. Again, that's not without these problems. All the tests have got some sort of limitations, but they just relatively gold standard. But obviously, taking blood, it's invasive. It's not something that people want normally, and the anxiety, crying, pain. But the TCBs seem to be the way they actually develop. They seem to do the job better than definitely just the skin color, but they don't seem to be accurate enough for the babies from the darker skin and for others, but more so for the darker skin. So I do think if they are tested and the reliability improved, and they can do that because it's just a formula based on what works for certain groups. So yes, certainly, short answer is yes, we do need to have, I think, more specific tools for specific populations being designed.
Fabulous. So inventors out there, if anyone's got an invention that would actually address this and all the different now in my brain, I'm thinking of these different skin tone things you have for makeup, and thinking, well, I bet you someone has got a machine that could measure differences much more effectively. So we'll throw out a challenge.
Yeah. I mean, we have PCBs that people use, but again, people didn't know how to use it. What is the threshold? And there are new, actually at the ICM, those people who came, there was a session about apps that they're developing for, with the apps kind of measuring skin tone and guessing the bilirubin level to.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So again, but then it's interesting, they were saying they haven't tested it enough in people with darker skin. So, just I think, just raising, these are there, but it just needs more focus, more investment, more research needed.
Yeah, and I think when it's being discussed, as we've discussed, and it's been discussed a lot in the media, hopefully that will cascade down into people testing it, which would make sense. So we've got, another thing, Jenny Hall. Hi, Jenny. She says, brilliant, brilliant, Amba and Hora. We've obviously used APGAR for so long. Do we know how other countries have adapted it?
Adapted
the APGAR?
Well, that's a very good question. I don't think anybody formally made changes to adopt it. I think people it is not in a standardized way. People have adopted it. I just looking at it terminology wise, I see some people, not many people use pink all over anymore. They just say pink. So I think to some extent people have adopted it, but not in a sense that they actually adopted to see is it work. Still, it's very much anecdotal. It's not standardized. It's not accepted globally. And as I said, it's just based on what people just say that we made it up. We just ignore the skin color. So people make it up for themselves, basically, not formally in a kind of standardized way being adopted.
Yeah, because one of the things we were talking about before we came on air was about the difficulty of having images that properly measure, and that's for students and for midwives and practitioners. And I know there's a lot of work going on with the practicing midwife, for example, and for our Maze Midwifery, we did a lot of work to try to get as many images to help students, and also the wording, but trying to move away from that pink all the time, because actually even some white babies aren't necessarily pink.
That's what it's actually,
we're all very varied, but we need to get to move towards that way.
Exactly. And that's one of the recommendations, creating a bank of pictures from different skin colors for different conditions, for jaundice, for cyanosis. It's really important to get that. And also, I think not only for for creating opportunities for practitioners to share those pictures, because some of these are really rare moments, rare occasions. And I think if for practitioners, if there's a web page to say, okay, if you came across this condition, please, obviously there's got to be some inherent consenting already in place to get these photos and uploaded for the good of, making the practice better for everyone, to upload it for training purposes, sharing experiences. It would be fantastic to do that. But who is interested? Who's going to fund that?
I think
that.
It needs to be funded, doesn't it? We need that information for all of us to be able to get better at what we do. Now, I have to say, this hour, and I always say this hour goes faster than any other hour in the week. And I'm very conscious that poor Hora is absolutely exhausted from being on every channel that can be. And Amba is also, as a student, obviously got probably 100 assignments to write, plus preparing for a holiday, which will be coming one day fairly soon, hopefully. So I want to say a big thank you to both of you for joining us this hour. It's been really fantastic, and I know you've done really well at condensing so much work, both of you, into a comparatively short time. So I'm going to say again, this is all on the resources, the whole thing, lots to be there. And you'll just have to look out for Amber's next conference. I'm already pushing myself in for an invite to that, because that'd be fantastic. And this is how you can be a fantastic student midwife. Fab. Now, I want to say thanks to Amber and Hora, thanks to Amy, who's in the background making sure all this works beautifully, and Deborah, who's done all this sort of stuff in the background, and Paul, who's sent off the questions through to me on my little side thing. And everything's going to be available on Friday for the podcast at 6 o'clock in the morning, whoever's running about at 6 o'clock in the morning, and on Tuesday. So let people know about this and share as widely as you can, because I think we need to talk about it. We need to get used to understanding our strengths and our weaknesses, and how we can get better at what we do for women and babies. It's very important. So we're going to have a little break now. We're all off to the seaside for the whole summer, not really. But we'll be back in September, and we've got some fantastic things coming. We may have to invite this pair, Hora and Amber, back, because they've still got a lot to say. They might not say the same thing. They might be doing different things, but that's fantastic. So in the meantime, thank you for coming along, and thank you for the lovely questions and comments. We'll see you in September. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.